Hey guys, what's going on? It's Nathan from tattooing101.com, and today we're up to the color tutorial. So we're just going to fill this rose in with color. I'm going to show you how I blend colors, how I pack my colors, and how I do my layering as well. Again, the machine that I'm using is the Injector Nano Light, and I've got it set at a 3.5mm stroke. That's what I normally use for color packing. I'll use a 3 for black and gray, 3.5 for color packing, blending, and 4mm for line work. Now, I'm also using different needles this time. Before I was using quadrants, which are 10 gauge needles. These are T-Tex. So difference is being 12 gauge, the sharps on the needles are thicker. So they're gonna put bigger holes into the skin. They're gonna pack the ink in a lot faster, which is really good for, it's exactly what we want for color packing. My depth, I might change this a little bit, but I do like to kind of float the needles a bit when I'm color packing. Just so it gives me a lot more visibility. I'm able to see what I'm doing. Right, so before we get into it, we want to do a couple of little warm-up exercises. I just like packing some solid colors, right? I'm keeping it pretty basic today. I've just got black, red, green, and yellow. And I've also got 3 ink caps here full of a color called Foundation Flesh from Fusion Ink. Now, the reason that I've got 3 of these is that this is the closest color you can get to actual skin tone. You can kind of see I'm a pretty white dude. And it matches that really closely. So when you whip your colors out and then you mix a little bit of that color with Foundation Flesh, it will blend really nicely to skin tone. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. So to start off with just packing, all you got to do is move in really tight oval formations. You want to make sure that your movements are extremely tight. If you're too loose like this, you won't get a solid color. You'll get like just a tint of that color. So you're really tight ovals. And again, you want to make sure that your needles don't kind of go side to side like that, because that'll slice up the skin. When you're doing your ovals, if you're going to move from a flat edge, you want to go diagonally up and down. So then that's going to still give you a solid fill, but it's not going to slice up the skin. And also cross hatching, right? So if you're moving up and to the right every time and then you change direction, you go the other way, it's going to fill in all the gaps that are left by the needles when they're going up and down and hitting the skin. So cross hatching will give you a lot more consistent fills. But yeah, the main thing is just move in a very tight oval formation and just keep the movements very controlled and very tight. And that's what will give you solid colors. Now when we want to blend the color right, we just whip it out a little bit on the edge. And the more whipped out it is, the easier it is to blend another color to it. Right, so we've got almost no ink in our needle from that red, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pinch the needles, get as much of the red out as I can, and then I'm gonna dip it in Foundation Flesh, and then I'm gonna dip it one more time. I'm gonna dip it in Foundation Flesh again. Now it's going to be a very light red, but it's not quite pink. It looks a little bit pink right now because it's just coming out of the tube, but once it's in the skin and it's mixed with the actual red, you'll see that it's just you're like a brighter kind of red. And the cool thing is that because it's when you're mixing it with Foundation Flesh, it's getting closer and closer to skin tone, so it's getting easier and easier to fade it out to skin tone. So now I've just blended it out a little bit more. Just give it a once over to kind of even it out a little bit. Cool. So I'm going to pinch the needles again. and then I'm going to get Foundation Flesh, and this time I'm going to dip it for a little bit longer, and this is almost, it's not even red anymore, it's just that cream color. And that's how you blend your colors out seamlessly to skin tone without diluting them with water, right? A lot of beginners, what they'll do is they think if they dilute the color with water, then they can flick it out and it'll get really nice and smooth. Don't do that. It doesn't work. So what you want to do instead is either just whip it out and leave it, then you get like that traditional kind of peppery look with the dots, or mix it with Foundation Flesh, and then you can seamlessly pack in the color and blend it out to skin tone. And when you whip it out and the color's mostly Foundation Flesh, it's like a perfect transition to skin. Cool, and that's how I blend my colors to skin. When I'm doing it, say if I'm like blending a red to a yellow or like a red to a purple or something like that, it's a very similar process. So I'll just do a solid bit of red, I'll whip it out, and then over that part that you've whipped out, so the solid red's here, and then I'll whip it out. Over that part where I've whipped it out, it's like 50% opacity. And if you put another color over the top of that, you'll still see a bit of the red, but you'll also see a bit of the color that you just packed over top of that whipped out section. Might sound a little bit confusing, but I'll demonstrate all of that when I do the tattoo just in a sec. Also, yeah, when it comes to layering, right? So that's kind of what I said with the layering is you're like putting down sort of a darker color first at a lower level of opacity, and then putting another color over the top. Now, you do have to be careful with this, right? Because layering works great, but always remember that a darker color will always show through a lighter color when the tattoo is healed. So, but not when it's fresh, right? So you can put a light color over a dark color when it's fresh and it will cover it. So a lot of people, when they do cover-ups, it looks great when they're fresh, but as soon as it heals, the old tattoo just shows right back up again. So you can, say if you tattoo like a little bit of red and then you tattoo a lighter color over that, that red was always going to show through. So yeah, just remember that, like, if I grab Foundation Flesh and I try and cover this red that I've packed in, the Foundation Flesh initially will cover it when it's fresh. It'll completely, it'll look like it's gone over it. I'll lighten it up. You can see how it looks like it's lightening up when I put this Foundation Flesh over it. Cool, so you can see that red looks a lot lighter when I put the Foundation Flesh over it. That's what's going to happen when it's healed, but so that's what's going to happen when it's fresh, but as soon as that's healed, that red's going to come straight back up through. So when you do your layers and you're putting your first colors down and just sort of lightly brushing them into the skin, think of the skin that's like it can only handle so much pigment. So when you whip a color out, it's like 50% full, and then when you pack ink into the skin, it's 100% full. You can't add any ink over the top of it unless it's a darker color and it covers the color underneath. But yeah, if you only whip the color out a little bit and it's only like, the skin's only like 50% full of pigment, and you put a lighter color over it, then the two will kind of mix. But once it's packed in and it's solid color, if you try and put a lighter color over the top, it's not going to last when it heals. But it's deceiving because it looks awesome when it's fresh. That's why so many portraits that, like in the photo straight after the tattoo, they look great. But then, a couple of weeks, months later, you see photos of them, and then it looks absolutely nothing like what it was done. It looks absolutely nothing like when it was fresh. Also as well for color, I'm going to be using a Fusion Power Black. So this is different from lining black. The difference between like shading black and lining black, so this is a lot thicker, and when I put it in, it's going to expand out into the skin as the tattoo ages more than lining will, because lining is very thin. It doesn't thicken as much over time, whereas this shading will definitely thicken. So you never want to use this for line work because it will just spread and your lines will get super fat. But it's really good for shading because if you're like packing, you know, like full tribal or something like that, and there's very small gaps that you leave behind, like just because of the way that your hand's moving when you're doing your oval shading, over time, the ink will expand and kind of fill out those gaps, but it's not like a silver bullet. It's very minimal, the effect. So you definitely can't rely on it, but it does help. There's like slight imperfections that will cover them up over time. Cool, so I got my machine on 10 volts and I'm just gonna put the blacks in first. You always wanna put your darker colors in first because if you wipe a dark color over a lighter color, it will stain it and it'll ruin the color because it'll show up when it heals. Just putting some Vaseline over the tattoo. Again, you don't need much because you can still clog your mags with Vaseline. It's not just line work that's a thing. All right, cool. Let's start putting these blacks in. And the way that I'm doing it is I'm using the corner of the mag. So one edge is going to be super sharp and filled, while it's going to have like a natural feathered edge on the other side. And then when I cross hatch by changing the direction of the mag like I'm doing now and whipping out, it's going to give me a nice evened fade out. Something to keep in mind as well is that you don't always have to push the needles into the skin super deep. When you want to get really light fades or just even out a transition, you can just lightly brush the top of the skin and it'll even it out. Now, you don't want to overdo the black too much. Like it's great to have a bit of black in the tattoo because it helps it age better. But if you put too much in, the tattoo will end up being very dark. So typically what I like to do is, instead of having like a ton of solid black, I'll just have a little bit whipped out. And then when I put the colors over the top, it'll still darken the areas that I want to be a little bit darker, but it won't be overpowering and it won't make the tattoo way too dark. But yeah, it's really important that you put as much black. It's really important that every tattoo that you do has at least a little bit of black in it, because that will give it more contrast. It'll make the colors pop more, and it will help it age better over time. So it can get a bit frustrating. Sometimes clients will want, a tattoo that's, just done in light purple or something like that. A lot of the time they don't realize that the tattoo will look very different in a couple of years' time. Again, just using the very corner of the mag to lightly brush in this black. And then over the top of that, I'm going to put some colors later on. I'm just using the very corners. I'm moving in like an oval formation, but because I'm using the corner, the edge that hits the mat is going to be dark, whereas the edge that's risen up, it'll give me a natural fade out, just because the needles will be different depths within the skin. You don't have to put a ton of it in, because once you put the color over the top of it, the black will still be visible. It'll darken it up just enough and give that little bit of extra depth. Whereas if you put too much in, you'll run out of space to kind of blend it out to skin tone. Just very lightly brushing these blacks in. If you're brand new to art as well as tattooing and you haven't got a ton of drawing experience, a good rule of thumb of like where to put your darker tones is the stuff that's at the back of the drawing, you want to make them darker, and the stuff that's kind of at the front of the drawing, you want to make them a bit lighter. So this is not a perfect hard and fast rule, but it's a great start. So for example, like this petal, we can see that this petal's on top of it, and so is this one. So naturally, we're just going to do this bit down here a little bit black because it's, you know, the furthest, the part that's the furthest away from the eye. And it's going to make it look like it's beneath those two petals. And again, I'm not using a curved mag for this. I'm using a straight mag. I just find that I like these better for color. It feels like I'm able to cover kind of more ground. And the way that I tattoo, I do a lot of packing in my color. And I just find that it's easier to get more consistent fills with a straight mag than it is with a curved. You can still do color with a curved mag, but my only advice would be just highly recommend using a 12 gauge because it will massively speed up how fast you can put the ink in the skin, and it'll reduce the time taken to do the tattoo. Obviously, it's probably not that obvious, but as you get better and better and you start doing like, you know, more advanced stuff like, you know, portraits, surrealism, whatever it may be, there are kind of exceptions to that. I know like there are a lot of color artists that use 10 gauge needles. But in the beginning, I'd recommend just sticking to 12s because it's just easier to get the ink in the skin. The cool thing as well, because I've got my needles out fairly deep, I'm floating the needle and there's very little ink going onto the practice skin, right? So it allows me to see what I'm doing, and whenever I dab it, it gets rid of all the excess ink. A lot of people, they won't have their needles, or they'll have their needles set very shallow. So as soon as they touch the skin, ink dumps everywhere, and they're constantly having to wipe, and they burn through paper towel, and it adds ages to the tattoo. And yeah, it's just a lot easier if you hang your needles out a bit. And again, when I'm shading, I'm using these two fingers to set the depth. My middle finger here is connected to like beneath the cartridge to keep it nice and steady, and it just rocks back and forth like that. I'm not sort of moving it with my thumb and my finger. I'm almost like pushing my elbow. You can just see my elbow kind of going back and forth, and it's rocking the machine back and forth, and it's just pivoting on these two fingers here, and that's how I'm getting my that's how I'm doing my oval shading. Cross hatching is super important because yeah, you'll get much smoother blends when you cross hatch. and your whip shading. You don't always just have to go from the same direction. If you switch it up, it'll come out nice and even. Again, cross-hatching, and I'm very lightly brushing it in because I don't want to get some really dark dots, because I don't want the skin to be fully saturated with black, so that when I pack green over the top of it for these leaves, you'll still be able to see the green at the very edges through the black. just whipping out these blacks. Again, you don't want to put too much. I'm not going to pack any of this black in because I'll pack color over the top of it. It'll still give it like a darker tinge towards where I'm putting my blacks, but it's not going to be super visible, you know. And I'm just lightly brushing over the top to even out the blend. Now, the cool thing about color is obviously you should try and get, you know, the whipping out of the black as smooth as you can and whipping out your colors as smooth as you can. But when you are packing color and, you know, blending colors and stuff, you will find that it's a bit more forgiving. So if you maybe get a transition that's not super smooth, you can generally hide a lot of it when you put the color over the top. So, I mean, again, aim for perfection, but just know that you will have a little bit more wiggle room with color in terms of getting stuff super smooth. Again, cross-hatching to get my nice, super smooth blends. And then just brushing over the top to smooth things out. Again, just using the corners to get that nice dark spot right up against the line. And that looks like it'll do it for the blacks. So now I can start the packing. Now, in the previous tattoo when we were doing the black and gray, I said that I like to use the biggest mag that a tattoo will allow. But sometimes it's actually faster to use a smaller mag when you've got lots of intricate tiny little spaces, because if I'm using a massive mag, I'm constantly having to maneuver it and use the corners, and it increases the chance that mistakes are going to be made and you're not going to get super flush, ultra smooth, clean fills. Whereas when you use a smaller mag, you can maneuver through these small areas a lot easier. So right now I'm using an 11 mag, which is a lot smaller than the 23. But yeah, it's big enough to cover lots of ground, but it's also small enough so that I'm able to move through these areas quite quickly. So now we'll just start the packing, and you'll see that I'm packing this green straight over the black that I've done. So what that will do is instead of there being like just solid black there and then fading out to green, it'll just be like a darker green towards the base of the leaf. And then I'm going to blend it out to skin tone towards the tip of the leaf. Again, if you want these designs so that you can follow along, there will be a link down in the description below. So you can just grab these and tattoo them as well. And you see how now I'm lightly brushing in the green, because now I'm doing the same thing I did with the black. I'm going to put a lighter green over the top of that, and then they're going to kind of mix, and we're going to get a nice even transition towards the end of the leaf, all the way to skin tone. A lot of trad guys will just leave it like that. They'll whip it out and they'll just have the green blending into the skin tone. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. A lot of people like that look. But if you want to go above and beyond and get everything, perfectly smooth, then yeah, mixing with foundation flesh is one way to do that. Just going to pack this green straight over the black, but I'll still be able to see the black through the green because it's a darker color. It might not be visible straight away when it's fresh, but as it heals, because the black is darker than the green, it's going to show through. And I'm just whipping the green out, preparing to put the next color over that. And that's pretty much how I do colors. I just pack colors in and then I whip them out and then I put the next color over the top and then I keep going until, yeah, the tattoo's done. Yeah, and also notice that I'm doing my dark colors first. Like if I did the red first and then wiped green over it, it'll completely mess up the green. And straight after I've whipped out all this green, I'll probably do the dark red first and then do the light green and then do the light red. So always make sure that I'm never wiping darker colors over lighter colors, because then that'll mess them up. I've got my voltage on 10 volts. A lot of people think as well is that you can tattoo really fast if you just turn up the volts. Wouldn't recommend that at all. Take your time with it. Because yeah, if you're not super confident in what you're doing and you turn up the volts super high, it's extremely easy to overwork stuff. So it's much better to take a little bit of time, be a little bit slow, and you know, add an extra hour or two to the tattoo, but it turns out, you know, twice as good. Always, when you're doing color as well, it's always best to dab as opposed to white, just because you're going to save, it's going to make things a lot more visible. And again, I don't always have 3 points of contact on shading because it just allows me to be more loose. When you want to get lighter shades, you expand the size of your ovals. It'll cover more ground and it'll put less ink over a wider area. Again, Vaseline, very good for getting the excess ink off these practice skins. Green soap on its own doesn't quite do it, but if you just put a bit of Vaseline and then a little bit of green soap on your paper towel, it'll pick the ink up real nice. So we've just got the green that's been packed, and now I'm just lightly putting in green for the rest of the leaf. So that way when I put the next color over the top, you're still going to be able to see that. It's going to blend really nice. And again, like I said, especially when you're blending two colors that are very similar together, your fade outs don't have to be perfect. They have to be good, but if they're not perfect, when you put the next color over the top of it, it will kind of hide it. Don't rely on that too much though, because obviously, you'll be a better tattooer if you get all your blends nice and clean. So. Cool, so that's pretty much all of the green. Now I'm just going to throw these reds in. It's important as well when you're switching colors, especially if the one before is darker, change your paper towel, because if you've got a bit of green ink on the paper towel and then you wipe that over red, again, it's going to stain it. So when you change colors, change your paper towel, rinse your needles out so that you can start again. I like the double rinse. This is why you only want to lightly put in the blacks, right? Because as I'm putting in this red, I've only got a very small negative left for when I put in the lighter red, and I'm going to rely on that to separate, you know, this petal from the one down here. Otherwise, you'd have like, you know, dark red to dark red, and they'd completely lose any illusion of depth, and it wouldn't look good as a tattoo. So again, just use the black sparingly. Every tattoo, in my opinion, needs it. But don't go crazy, because you can run out of room in a small design for your blends. That was kind of one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was just starting out, was always putting too much black into my tattoos. And yeah, everything looked really dark. So and again, I'm just whipping this red out. Again, just cross-hatching. And I'm not worried about that red that's going over the green, because I know the green's darker and it's not going to stain it no matter how much of it goes on there. I'm moving, like really quickly. I'm doing like a combination of packing and whipping out. I'm just moving my needles really quickly to get in a small amount of red. And it's going to spread it across a wide area. Again, always remember to dab, because yeah, dab first, and then if you have to, wipe second, because it will just stop the ink from smearing all over the tattoo. I'm trying not to rotate the skin too much, just because you want to practice being able to do angles that you're not comfortable with, because when you start tattooing people, you can't just flip them around. As much as I wish I could, but yeah, that doesn't work. when I'm moving really fast as well, I haven't got my needles all the way in the skin. I'm just lightly brushing over the top. With a color machine as well, you want something that's got a little bit of a harder hit. So right now I'm still using the soft tension bar with the Injector Nano, but there's a couple of ways you can rotate it. I've rotated it in a certain way that, if it's like flat ways like that, it's got less give, whereas if it's sideways, it's got more. So I've just increased I've decreased the give just a little bit, so that it packs a little bit more of a punch. It's just easy to get those colors into the skin. Again, I've packed a little bit of red. Now I'm whipping out from it to get that nice fade, where I can put another color over the top of the part that I've whipped out. It's good to cross hatch as well. to get it nice and even. Just doing a little bit of pendulum shading right now, just kind of brushing back and forth. I want these petals up the top to be a little bit lighter, so I won't put as much red in them. So you can almost leave it like this for that trad look of just whipping out the color and just whipping it out to skin tone. Nothing wrong with that, super popular style. You just gotta make sure that it's super clean. But what I like to do is I like to pack the whole thing full of color and blend it out using foundation flesh to skin tone. I just think, in my opinion, I reckon it looks better, but each their own, you know. Alright, so I'm going to start mixing with the foundation flash. Keep my colours nice and light. But before that, I might just quickly finish off that green. When you have got a lighter color and you've got to do a dark one next to it, what you can do is you can put a bunch of Vaseline on it and that will protect it. So if you do get any ink on it, it won't seep in, it will just wipe straight off. Now we're going to get most of the green out of the cartridge, so that when we mix it with foundation flesh, it's nice and light. Make sure that you've got a separate ink cap of foundation flesh for each color that you dip it into, just because otherwise, because it's a very light color, it's easily kind of tainted. So I was using red and green in both, it would kind of mess it up. So and right now I'm just packing this really light green over the greens that I've whipped out. That's what gives us the nice, smooth transitions. The cool thing as well about mixing your colors with foundation flesh is that it maintains the vibrancy, right? When you mix like a green with a white or a black, it mutes it out. Whereas if you want your colors to look nice and rich, if you mix them with foundation flesh, then they'll maintain their vibrancy. So really useful for like new school and stuff like that when you want to make your colors super bright and pop. All right, that's all the leaves done. Now just dip a corner into the red to get a little bit in the cartridge. Wipe most of it out. And when you're mixing colors with foundation flesh too, every time you dip it in the foundation flesh, the color gets lighter. So you can use that to your advantage and making your blends kind of brighter and brighter as they move across. Again, just moving my needles in really tight ovals to get that nice solid packing. cross hatching now to get the fills nice and consistent. Again, just using the corners of the mag to get in those really tight areas. Now we're going to throw the yellow in, and then after that we'll do some highlights and then we're done. Yellow can be a tricky color to get in when you're tattooing this on actual people, just because as soon as the blood starts to come through, you'll kind of get all sort of red spots through it, and it'll be kind of difficult to tell whether it's in solid. But you kind of just have to really take your time with it and just trust that if you see blood on the skin, then the ink's already in there. You don't want to keep going over it, because then that will overwork the skin. Again, just really tight, controlled movements, and I'm rocking my hand back and forth. I'm not trying to move my hand like that. I'm literally just pushing my elbow back and forth, and I'm just rocking on and pivoting on these two fingers just here, and that's how I'm getting these nice tight oval formations. If you try and use your hand, you'll fatigue really quick, and you won't be able to, you'll be really slow when you're tattooing. All right, so now we've got all our color done, and we're going to do the white. You want to make sure that you pour the white at the very end of the tattoo, because it does dry much faster than all the other colors. So if you pour it in at the start, by the time you get to the very end, it'll be all hardened up and you won't be able to use it. It'll just waste your ink. So right now I'm using a 12 gauge 7 round shader to put my highlights in. I always use a round shader to do highlights. And I just do nice thin lines. Generally I find less is more with highlights. And when you're doing them, same like when you're doing your lines, I slowly arc in. I don't just push the needle in full depth straight away. I arc in, I arc out. I start real shallow and then I slowly get deeper. And then as I get deeper, the line gets thicker. And then as I taper out, the line gets thinner and I get a nice, clean little swoop where it's tapered at both ends. Another thing as well is when you do highlights, you want to make sure that if you're using not a cartridge machine, don't use a steel tip grip, because the metal filings of the needle filing against the tube, the filings will taint the white and it'll go slightly grey. So always use a disposable when doing highlights. And you can put white over a light color and the white will still show through. But if you put white over black, it'll just get hidden again, or the black will just show up through when it heals. Cool, that's it for the highlights, and we're done. Of course, so just to do a bit of a recap, when you're packing color, the most important thing that I recommend is using 12 gauge needles. Just for when you're starting out, it's going to make it a lot easier. You're going to be able to tattoo a lot faster. If you do have a machine that has an adjustable tension bar, whether that's a coil or a rotary machine like the injector, I use kind of like a medium to sort of hard give, just because you want a machine that packs a bit more punch with color so that it can just really smash it into the skin. When you are packing color, sometimes in the smaller areas, a smaller needle is going to be able to maneuver a lot faster and you'll be able to tattoo even though you're using a smaller needle cartridge. But when you get sort of big open planes like this where you've got to put large areas of flat color, you want a bigger mag for that. I do use straight mags for my color work, just because I find it's easier to kind of get like even blocks of color. But you can use curved mags. It's more of a preference thing than like an actual like law. But yeah, and when you are packing, it's really important to just move the machine in tight oval formations, but don't try and do it with your hand like that. You just want to rock your elbow back and forth and then pivot on these two fingers that you see here. And then that's what's going to give you your nice ovals. It's almost like your hand's kind of like shaking, kind of like that, as opposed to trying to move with your hand, because it'll just take forever and your hand will get really fatigued too. When you are packing as well, make sure that, again, you can kind of bend this rule a bit once you start doing realism, you're doing like fur and stuff like that. But what you don't want to do is move side to side, because then all the needles in the mag line up and it slices the skin like a razor blade. When you are packing, either tilt your mag on an angle like that and then do your ovals, so then that way the needles never line up. Or if you have to go flat, go diagonal back and forth instead of in an oval where it's just slicing the skin up and down, slicing. If you go in it diagonally, has the same effect. None of the needles will line up, and then you would cover large areas of skin, and the color will block in really nice. Also as well, when you are putting color in, when you whip a color out, it's like the skin is 50% full of pigment. You can put another color over the top of that. If it's lighter, the two colors will both show when it's healed. But if you pack the skin full of pigment and it's fully solid in, you can't put another color over the top of that. Even if you lightly brush it, when it heals, that color that's beneath it is just going to show through. So yeah, when you are doing your layering, just be a bit careful. Don't go too heavy on the first layer. Put it in nice and light, and then put your other colors over the top of that, so you can see both colors when the tattoo is healed. Also, do dark colors first, because if you wipe a dark color over a light color, it's going to stain it. Yeah, 3.5 stroke is kind of ideal for me. You can use a 4mm stroke. I know Bishop, they sell like a packer wand that's like a 4mm stroke. Those are good too, but 3.5 kind of works for me. Same thing with black and gray as well, cross hatching as well. When you whip your colors out, if you go in different directions, you'll get a lot smoother fade outs as well. But you don't have to be, you get a bit more margin of error with color, because especially when you're just mixing the same color that you just whipped out with like a foundation flesh, the color is very similar, so that when you layer them next to each other, they just kind of tend to blend anyway. And the lighter and lighter the color is, the easier it is to blend out the skin tone. So I hope that helps. That's pretty much, that's the end of the tutorial series. So we have got some more cool emails coming out. So stay tuned for those. And I will see you next time. Take it easy, guys. So I hope that helps, guys. If you got any value out of this video at all, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. And by the way, if you are looking to become a professional tattoo artist, then you should definitely check out our Artist Accelerator program. Inside, we've broken down the entire process of learning how to tattoo down into 9 simple steps that literally anyone can follow. We've taught over 2,500 artists to tattoo since we started back in 2016. So if you want to learn from someone that's been there and done it and follow a proven process, highly recommend checking out the Artist Accelerator program. I'll leave a link down below, and I'll see you there. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.